In this video, I'm going to reveal to you 5 crucial KPIs for your sales team that are actually more important than revenue. Yep, you heard that right. Revenue isn't the only metric that matters, even in sales. And if you're only focused on revenue, you're missing out on the bigger picture because revenue is a backward-looking metric. What do I mean by that? Well, we can't fix anything when we got to the end of the quarter and the revenue number's light or high. We can't make any changes. So we have to start looking at things that are forward-looking metrics. I'm sure you've been in the environment where you go into a quarterly meeting and everyone goes, "Oh, missed the revenue number. You guys are all bad." It's not helpful. So there are other numbers that are more important than revenue as far as managing a sales team in order to make them successful. So these alternative KPIs are something that you really watch this video because they will change the way that you manage your team and the success that your business has in generating revenue. And more than that, it will actually help you understand why things are going the way you want them to, or maybe they're going the wrong way. See, most sales leaders and CEOs obsess over revenue. But that's a big mistake. If you want your team to thrive, you need to look beyond the sales number, beyond the dollars, and focus on the things that drive those dollars. It's super, hyper, critical, crazy important. Because if you're not focusing on these and you're only looking at revenue, you are gonna overlook problems and miss opportunities to improve. So I've got to ask you, do you ever wonder why some sales teams hit their revenue targets and blow it out of the park, and the next quarter they miss? What is breeding this inconsistency and potential burnout among those sales teams? Well, I'm here to tell you the revenue numbers and the things are influenced by the KPIs that we're going to talk about today. Because it's not just about looking at whether or not we made a quota. It's more about what went to leading towards a successful quota and a profitable business. So we're gonna jump into that. See, I used to think as long as we hit our revenue targets, everything was fine. And then, we'd crush revenue in Q2 by 150%, and then we'd be pipeline empty for Q3, and we'd do 72%. And then we get to the end of that quarter, our pipeline would be full, and we'd do 137% in the following quarter. Well, that inconsistency is something that was happening because I was not focusing on things outside of the actual revenue or quota attainment numbers. And that led to a lot of challenges and setbacks. And truthfully, what does that lead to as a sales manager or a CEO? Well, if you're a sales manager, it leads to nobody believing you about whether or not you're actually going to close the business you say your team's going to close. And if you're a CEO, it makes it incredibly difficult to consider where to make investments and hiring decisions for your team. But about 12 or 15 years ago, when I started focusing on KPIs that were forward-looking, metrics that would tell me when something was happening today that was going to influence my number in the future, is when I started to understand the massive importance, not of just measuring metrics, but of making sure that you measure the exact right metrics. Because focusing only on revenue is like driving a car and only focusing on the speedometer. You're missing out on critical information that could help you navigate better. So if you're still measuring success by revenue alone, you're likely overlooking the factors that drive sustainable business growth and sales growth. So let's jump into the 5 things that you need to measure, the 5 sales KPIs that you can measure to help drive the performance of your organization. KPI 1, your lead conversion rate. Your lead conversion rate, this measures how effectively you take a qualification call and you turn it into a sales opportunity. What percentage of conversations are you having that actually have some sort of potential business attached to them? Now, let's pause. Because what you think that number should be and what it should be are 2 very different things. What you think it should be is, well, every conversation, every discovery call should turn into a sales opportunity. And therefore you wonder what you did wrong, they did wrong, did you talk to the right person, etc. Well, that's not true. We know that the best teams in the world convert 50 to 60% of their qualification calls into discovery calls. Their qualification calls into sales opportunities. So if you have a seller who's setting 10 appointments a month and getting conversations and converting 3 or 4 of them into sales opportunities, pour gas on that fire and continue to enable them to, because that is the work. And those other 6 or 7, make sure we don't just throw them to the wayside. Find a way to put them in a nurture so next year sales becomes easier. So the lead conversion rate is super critical because it's going to tell you how effectively we're having conversations, the quality of the leads. It's going to give you a piece of data that you can dive into to actually find out why things are happening or not. KPI number 2, sales cycle length. It would amaze you the number of conversations I have, or maybe it wouldn't. Maybe you're one of these people who don't know what their actual sales cycle length is. And here's how I can tell when I ask somebody whether or not they actually understand it. Hey, what's your sales cycle length, Bob? About 45 days. Because if we had the data and knew the number, we'd say 42 or 47. The specificity matters because without specificity, we can't measure change. But this is super critical because we want to measure it in 2 ways. From the initial contact till the actual win of the deal. And the second way is that we want to measure it to avoid bottlenecks, because if we're looking at the conversion rate between stages and the amount of time something stays in a particular stage, so let's say it's going from a scoping call to a proposal. And our average time in that stage is 27 days. But you're seeing deals that are consistently 45, 50, 60 days in that stage. Well, that's where you can dive in then and make an actual impact on your team. Go figure out what's going on there. But sales cycle length is critically important, particularly as you talk about how to remove bottlenecks. So know that KPI number 2 is something that's going to provide you real tangible data that you can dive into. KPI 3, customer acquisition cost. Or as they like to say in private equity, CAC. The third KPI is customer acquisition cost. And yes, you in sales leadership and you as a CEO must understand how much it costs to acquire a new client. This metric is vital to understand the profitability of your sales efforts. If you have a $1,500 CAC and you have a $2,000 customer, you made $500. If you, on the other hand, have, say, a $2,000 CAC and a $1,500 customer, you lost $500. Now, you can extrapolate that out over years, whether or not you're professional services or you have ARR and a SaaS model. And there are different decisions that you can make. But the lower we can do on getting the CAC, that helps us with our overall business sustainability because it means we don't have to use as much gas to keep the fire going. So we want to lower the CAC in order to improve our margins. So that can help us optimize marketing efforts, the conversion of the rates from our sales team from front to back. There's lots of ways that we can dig in and make this better. KPI 4, customer retention rate. Oh, this is a big one because this is one that's kind of overlooked. And people say, well, if I've got a 78% retention rate, well, yeah, that means you lose 22% of your revenue every single year. How's that a great hole to start in? So the fourth KPI is customer retention rate because it directly impacts your ability to scale sales quickly. In a SaaS model where it's a subscription basis on a yearly, monthly, quarterly basis, we get a really high retention rate. Everything we sell goes on top of that for growth. If the retention rate's off and we're losing revenue, we're always starting behind the 8 ball. Retaining customers is often and almost always more effective than acquiring new ones. In addition to that, not only is retaining them better, they're easier to cross-sell and upsell because they have a familiarity with you and they already know, like, and respect the people within your organization. This has a drastic impact on long-term revenue. So remember, we want to make sure that we can do things around improving this, whether it's post-sale support, consistent communication, but this is a metric beyond sales and into your project leadership and into your delivery side of your business that they need to be intimately familiar with. KPI 5, sales rep activity metrics. Okay, I can see the eyes rolling in the back of your heads. I know what's happening. You're sitting there thinking, Ken, there is no way that I want to measure phone calls and emails and meetings and activity. Like I hire professionals who are there to do their job. Okay. You want inconsistent sales, you want inconsistent efforts, and you don't want to actually tell your people what their role and responsibility is in order to make sure that they have an opportunity to be successful. You can take that tact. But these metrics are the basic blocking and tackling of sales, and we have to understand them, and they may be different by position in your organization. But if you can't do the basic blocking and tackling, it doesn't matter what else we do to support our sales team because there'll never be enough volume of activity to actually matter. So understand that sales rep activity metrics absolutely matter, and we must make sure we're there. At a minimum, Make sure your CRM is set up to understand how many brand new, net new first meetings or discovery calls or whatever you call it are happening by each one of your reps each week. Do that in a trailing 30-day report, and you'll be able to look at and potentially forecast what your revenue looks like down the stream instead of after you miss it. So make sure that we're tracking it. It's critically important. And in this remote world, it's become more important because people get distracted and they don't do the basic blocking and tackling. So to recap, the 5 KPIs that are more important in revenue because they'll actually let you look forward instead of backwards. You look through the front windshield instead of the back windshield are lead conversion rate, sales cycle length, customer acquisition cost, customer retention rate, and sales rep activity metrics. Remember, these are critical because what you're seeing in all of them is they're helping us manage the business more effectively and profitably, and they're helping us understand what's happening today in the moment that's going to actually predict and influence your business growth in the coming months and quarters. There are more advanced KPIs out there that we set up for our clients every single day, but this is a fantastic place for you to start to understand what's actually happening in your sales organization. So I would tell you right now, pause this video, look at the bookmarks, and go start asking the people who can figure out and put it in your CRM or can get you the reporting on this, how you can gain access to that data for your organization. And let me know, come back to me and tell me what was the impact that made on you by changing and actually looking at things outside of just revenue and quota attainment. So if you found this video valuable, don't forget to like and subscribe. We are putting out these YouTube videos every single week, and we have massive amounts of sales data, methodology, training that are on all of our social media channels. Follow us on LinkedIn and you'll be one of the other 12,000 people who I talk to every single day. So hit like, hit subscribe, look at the other social channels. Whatever social channel you're on, we're on too. Thank you for watching, and I'm gonna see you on the next one.